Jack, don't wait up tonight. I'm going out with some friends from work, Stacy called out as she leaned toward the mirror, carefully applying her lipstick. Her voice was casual, but there was an undercurrent of excitement that Jack couldn't miss. Jack sat in the living room, his newspaper open but unread. He had heard this line before, too many times. Friends from work? You mean that boss of yours? His voice was steady, but there was no mistaking the suspicion in it. Stacy's hand paused for a split second before she resumed her routine. She forced a smile as she turned to face him, trying to mask the flicker of guilt. Yeah, so what? What are you going to do about it? It's just a night out, Jack. Don't be such a bore. Jack folded his newspaper and set it aside, his eyes narrowing as he looked at her. Stacy, come on. We both know what's really going on here. You don't even bother to hide it anymore. Her irritation flared, and she rolled her eyes, turning back to the mirror. Don't start, Jack. It's nothing serious. I'm just having some fun, something you clearly forgot how to do. And I'm not going to lie, I want to taste his Johnson so bad, and nothing more. Jack stood up, his frustration boiling over. Fun? Is that what you call it? Are you lost your mind? Throwing away our marriage for some fling with your boss? Stacy spun around, her expression hardening. Oh, please. Don't act like this marriage was ever special. I'm going out, Jack. Deal with it. She grabbed her purse from the bed and headed for the door. Jack moved to block her path, desperation creeping into his voice. Stacy, don't do this. We can fix things if you just talk to me. Stacy hesitated for the briefest moment, but the resolve in her eyes didn't waver. Talk? There's nothing to talk about. I'm done pretending everything's okay. Pretending? You're the one pretending this is just about fun. You think I don't know what's really going on? That I don't know about Damien? Stacy's face tightened, and she shook her head. You don't know anything, Jack. Just stay out of my way. As she moved to push past him, Jack grabbed her arm. Stacy, listen to yourself. This isn't you. This isn't us. She yanked her arm free, her eyes blazing with anger. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think. Now move, loser. Jack's grip loosened, and he watched helplessly as she stormed out of the house. The door slammed behind her, echoing through the silence of their home. Jack stood there for a long moment, his fists clenched at his sides. The woman he loved was slipping away, and all he could do was watch. But as the anger simmered in his chest, he knew he couldn't just let it go. He walked over to the coffee table, where his phone lay. His hands shook as he unlocked it, navigating to a hidden folder labeled Evidence. Inside were weeks of pictures, texts, and videos of Stacy and Damien. Proof of the betrayal he had tried so hard to ignore. He had planned to confront her with it, to force her to see the damage she was causing. But now, as he stared at the images on the screen, he realized that confrontation wouldn't be enough. Not anymore. Jack's jaw tightened as a dark thought took root in his mind. If Stacy wanted to throw everything away, he would make sure she understood the consequences. All of them. He set the phone down, his heart pounding as he began to plan. Stacy thought she could walk all over him, that she could betray him and get away with it. But she was wrong. So very wrong. Jack sat back down on the couch, but this time, there was no cold rage settling in his chest. There was only a quiet, calculated determination. He would wait for her to come home, but not for the reason she expected. Tonight would be the last night she underestimated him. Stacy laughed, the sound mingling with the upbeat music as she raised her glass to Damien's, her arrogant boss. The bar was packed, the energy high, and she reveled in the escape from the suffocating tension at home. She felt alive again, like the old Stacy, before the monotony of marriage had dulled her spark. Damien leaned in close, his breath warm against her ear, his hand resting possessively on her thigh. You're too good for that loser husband of yours, Stacy, Damien murmured, his voice low and intimate. You deserve someone who knows how to satisfy you right. Stacy took a sip of her drink, the alcohol buzzing pleasantly in her veins. She turned to him, a smirk playing on her lips. Maybe you're right, Damien. Maybe I've been wasting my time. It's about time I started thinking about what I really want. Damien grinned, his eyes dark with desire. And what do you want, Stacy? She leaned in, her lips brushing against his ear. I want to live a little. I want to have fun with you and your big Johnson. Damien didn't need any more encouragement. He closed the distance between them, his lips capturing hers in a hungry kiss. Stacy kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands tangling in his hair. In that moment, she felt nothing but contempt for Jack and their failing marriage. Damien was everything Jack wasn't: exciting, dangerous, unpredictable. As they broke apart, both breathless, Damien's hand slid further up her thigh, his intentions clear. "Let's get out of here," he suggested, his voice thick with lust. Stacy nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They left the bar, their arms around each other, laughing as they stumbled into the night. The city lights blurred as they hailed a cab, the world outside forgotten. Damien's apartment was sleek and modern, a far cry from the cozy but suffocating home she shared with Jack. They barely made it through the door before Damien was on her again, his hands roaming her body, his mouth trailing hot kisses down her neck. Stacy responded eagerly, her mind clouded by the thrill of it all. They tumbled onto the couch, clothes discarded in a frenzy. Stacy's heart pounded in her chest, a mixture of excitement and fear. She knew she was crossing a line, one that couldn't be uncrossed. But right now, she didn't care. She was caught up in the rush of the moment, the need to feel something, anything besides the numbness that had taken over her life. As Damien moved over her, their bodies entwined, Stacy pushed all thoughts of Jack out of her mind. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? To feel desired, to be with someone who made her heart race? But even as she gave in to the passion, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered a warning. She was playing a dangerous game, one that could destroy everything she knew. But that voice was quickly drowned out by Damien's touch, by the intoxicating thrill of stepping over the edge. When it was over, they lay tangled together, the room quiet except for their ragged breathing. Stacy stared up at the ceiling, the reality of what she'd done slowly sinking in. She had taken it as far as she could, and there was no going back now. Damien shifted beside her, pulling her close. "Stay the night," he whispered, his hand trailing lazily down her arm. Stacy hesitated, the weight of her actions settling heavily on her chest. "I can't," she said finally, untangling herself from his embrace. "I need to go." Damien frowned but didn't press her. "All right, but you know where to find me." Stacy dressed quickly, the exhilaration of the night fading as she stepped out into the cool night air. As she walked to the waiting cab, the consequences of her choices loomed large in her mind. The thrill was gone, replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. The front door creaked as Stacy pushed it open, stepping inside with a heavy, unsteady gait. Her head throbbed from the lingering effects of last night's indulgence, and her stomach churned with a mix of regret and residual alcohol. She tossed her keys onto the hallway table, the sound echoing through the unnervingly silent house. "Jack," she called out, her voice cracking slightly. The silence that greeted her was thick, almost oppressive. Usually, she would find him in the kitchen, brewing coffee or reading the paper. But today, there was nothing, just a hollow, empty stillness. Stacy moved into the living room, her steps faltering as she took in the scene. The room, once filled with her treasured possessions, was stripped bare. The luxurious rugs, the designer bags, the paintings she'd carefully selected, all gone. It was as if someone had taken a vacuum to her life and sucked away everything that mattered to her. Her eyes darted around in disbelief until they landed on the coffee table. There, amid the dust left by her missing belongings, was a torn-up marriage certificate and wedding ring, now smashed into pieces. Her breath caught in her throat. With trembling hands, she reached for the note lying next to the ring. The handwriting was unmistakable, Jack's, but it was different, jagged and filled with anger. "You bitch lost everything in one night. Tomorrow, yours and your lover's life will change forever." Stacy's heart pounded against her ribs as she stared at the words, trying to comprehend their meaning. What had he done? What was he planning? Panic clawed at her insides as she dropped the note and raced upstairs. "Jack? Jack! Where are you?" she yelled, her voice growing more frantic with each step. She threw open the bedroom door, expecting to find him packing or at least waiting to confront her. But the room was as empty as the rest of the house. His side of the closet was cleared out. The drawers that once held his clothes now gaped open and barren. She searched the bathroom, the guest room, even the garage, but there was no sign of him anywhere. It was as if he had vanished, leaving behind only the ominous message and the eerie emptiness of their home. Stacy's mind raced as she sank to the floor in the bedroom, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. This wasn't just about their broken marriage anymore. Jack was planning something beyond her worst nightmares. The memories of last night flashed through her mind, Damien's hands on her, the wild abandon she'd felt. It all seemed so far away now, overshadowed by the dread creeping up her spine. What did Jack mean by changing her life and Damien's? Her thoughts spiraled as she tried to piece together the possibilities. Could he have gone to the police? No. This felt more personal, more vindictive. This was Jack's revenge, and it wasn't just about taking her things. It was about taking her life apart, piece by piece. She fumbled for her phone, dialing Jack's number, but it went straight to voicemail. "Jack, please, let's talk. Whatever you're thinking, we can work this out," she pleaded, her voice trembling. But she knew, deep down, that Jack was far beyond talking. Dropping the phone onto the bed, Stacy buried her face in her hands. The full weight of her choices pressed down on her, and for the first time, she realized just how far she had fallen. The life she had known, the security she had taken for granted, was gone. And now, all she could do was wait for the nightmare Jack had promised would come tomorrow. The sun had barely risen when Stacy woke up, drenched in sweat, her heart pounding. Nightmares had haunted her sleep, filled with shadows of Jack and the ominous words from his note. She tried to shake off the unease, telling herself it was just paranoia. Jack wouldn't actually hurt her. He was angry, sure, but he wasn't a monster. She dragged herself out of bed, her limbs heavy with exhaustion, and shuffled toward the kitchen. Coffee. That's what she needed, something to clear her head. As she reached for the coffee pot, her gaze flicked toward the backyard, and she froze. There, in the middle of the lawn, was a large, dark package. It hadn't been there the night before. Stacy's stomach knotted, her pulse quickening. The package was wrapped in thick plastic, like something hastily concealed. A sense of dread washed over her, but curiosity got the better of her. She hesitated at the back door, her hand hovering over the handle. What could it be? Maybe it was just another of Jack's sick jokes, something to scare her. With a deep breath, she unlocked the door and stepped outside, the cool morning air biting at her skin. The package was large, about the size of a person. Stacy's heart raced as she approached it, the stench hitting her like a brick wall. It was foul, an overwhelming odor of decay and rot that made her stomach lurch. She gagged, covering her nose with her hand, but the smell was relentless. Her steps slowed as she neared the package, her mind screaming at her to turn back. But she couldn't. She had to know what was inside. Trembling, she reached out, her fingers brushing against the edge of the plastic. It was sticky, as if something had leaked through. "Don't do this, Stacy," she whispered to herself, her voice shaking. But it was too late. She grabbed the plastic and yanked it open. The sight that greeted her was more horrific than anything her nightmares could have conjured. Inside the package was Damien, his body twisted and mutilated beyond recognition. His face, once so full of confidence and charm, was contorted in agony, his eyes wide open, staring blankly at the sky. Blood soaked his clothes, and deep gashes marred his flesh, the marks of a vicious attack. Stacy screamed, the sound tearing from her throat as she stumbled back, her legs giving out beneath her. She hit the ground hard, the breath knocked out of her, but the pain barely registered. All she could see was Damien's lifeless body, the man who had been her escape, now reduced to a grisly warning. Her mind raced, the pieces clicking together in a horrifying realization. Jack had done this. He had found out about the affair and had exacted his revenge in the most brutal way possible. This wasn't just a message, it was a promise. Jack had shown her what he was capable of, and the thought of what he might do next sent a cold shiver down her spine. Stacy scrambled to her feet, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She couldn't stay here. She had to get away, far away, before Jack came back for her. But as she turned to run, another thought struck her, stopping her in her tracks. If Jack could do this to Damien, what was he planning to do to her? Stacy's thoughts raced as she stood in the wreckage of her life, the smell of death still clinging to her clothes. She knew she couldn't stay here. Jack could return at any moment, and she was certain he wouldn't stop until he had finished whatever twisted plan he had started. But where could she go? Who could she trust when the one person she had relied on for years was now her greatest enemy? Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone, desperately trying to dial 911. But when she pressed the call button, there was nothing. No ring, no connection. The screen was blank. Panic flooded her as the realization hit. Jack had cut the line. He had thought of everything. "God damn it," she whispered, her voice cracking as fear took hold. She was trapped, isolated with no one to turn to. The house that had once been her safe haven was now a prison, and she was its only inmate. She couldn't just sit there, waiting for him to come back. She had to move, to get out, to survive. Her mind snapped to the only option left, her car. If she could reach it, she could drive far away, put miles between herself and Jack. Without wasting another second, Stacy bolted toward the garage, her heart hammering in her chest. But as she flung open the garage door, the sight before her crushed what little hope she had left. Her car, her one escape, was ruined. The tires were slashed, the windows shattered, and the engine hood was left ajar, exposing a mess of wires and parts ripped out by a vindictive hand. Jack had destroyed it, ensuring there was no easy way out. "Damn it, Jack," she screamed, her voice echoing in the cold, empty garage. Tears streamed down her face, blurring her vision as despair clawed at her. She was trapped, and the walls were closing in fast. Just then, a low rumble filled the air, the unmistakable sound of a car engine approaching. Stacy's blood turned to ice as she realized what it meant. Jack was coming back. He was close, and she had nowhere to run. Her mind screamed at her to move, to hide, to do something, anything, to stay alive. She spun on her heel, her breath hitching in her throat, and dashed back into the house. She needed a place to hide, somewhere Jack wouldn't find her. She raced through the house, her footsteps echoing loudly in the silence. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a countdown to her doom. The basement. She could hide in the basement, behind the old boxes of holiday decorations they never used. It wasn't perfect, but it was her only chance. Stacy flew down the stairs, nearly tripping in her haste. She reached the basement door and flung it open, the darkness below swallowing her whole as she descended into the shadows. She could hear the car pulling into the driveway now, the engine cutting off. Jack was here. She crouched low behind a stack of boxes, her breath coming in shallow, silent gasps. The only sound was the pounding of her heart, each beat a reminder that she was still alive, for now. She strained to listen, her ears pricked for any sign of him. Then she heard it, the front door creaking open, heavy footsteps crossing the threshold. Jack stepped out of the car, his movements methodical, each step deliberate. His face was set in a mask of cold determination, eyes narrowed as he focused on the house ahead. He knew Stacy was inside, had felt the shift in the air the moment he pulled into the driveway. She had found the package. The thought of her horror, her realization, fueled him as he approached the front door. The night had been long, filled with preparation and careful calculation. Every detail had been meticulously planned, every move considered. Now, standing on the threshold, it was time to finish what he had started. He reached the front door, taking a moment to savor the silence that hung heavy in the air. He could almost taste her fear, a bitter tang that spurred him forward. Without hesitation, he lifted his boot and kicked the door in, the wood splintering under the force. The sound echoed through the house, sharp and jarring, but inside, everything remained still. Jack stepped into the entryway. The hunt had begun, his eyes scanning the shadows. "Stacy," he called out, his voice smooth, almost gentle, but with an undercurrent of menace. "Come out, Stacy. There's nowhere to hide." He moved through the house with slow, deliberate steps, checking each room with calculated precision. The kitchen was empty, the living room too. Each room he cleared brought him closer to the inevitable, and he relished the anticipation. He knew she was near. He could feel the tension in the air, could almost hear the rapid, panicked beat of her heart. In the hallway, he paused outside the bedroom, the door slightly ajar. He pushed it open, the hinges creaking as he stepped inside. The bed was unmade, the remnants of her frantic search still scattered across the floor. But Stacy wasn't there. Jack's eyes flicked to the closet door, left open just a crack. He yanked it open, but it was empty, only shadows and the lingering scent of her perfume. His lips curled into a twisted smile. She was running, but she couldn't run far. Not from him. He retraced his steps, the creaking of the floorboards beneath his feet loud in the oppressive silence. His gaze fell on the basement door, slightly ajar, and a wave of certainty washed over him. She was down there, cowering in the darkness. With a grim satisfaction, Jack reached for the handle, opening the door with a deliberate slowness. The stairs descended into pitch blackness, the air thick with the smell of dust and dampness. He didn't need light to know she was there. He could feel her, the way prey senses its predator. "Stacy," he called again, stepping onto the first stair. The wood groaned under his weight as he descended, each step measured, unhurried. The basement was a maze of old boxes and forgotten things, the perfect place for her to hide, or so she might think. But there was no hiding from him. Not now. As he reached the bottom, his eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering in through a small window. He could make out the outline of the boxes, the faint outline of her figure huddled behind them. She was trying to be still, but he could hear the faint sound of her breath, ragged and uneven. "Stacy," Jack said softly, his voice a low growl. "This ends now." Stacy huddled in the corner of the basement, her body trembling uncontrollably. Every sound above her, Jack's deliberate footsteps, the creak of the stairs, sent waves of dread through her. She knew what was coming. Jack had already shown his willingness to kill. He had proven that with Damien. The cold reality settled in. Jack intended to end her life as well. Her breathing was shallow, her hands clenched into fists. She had been the victim for too long, let herself be belittled and betrayed. The realization stung sharply, but it ignited something fierce within her. She wasn't ready to go down without a fight. Jack wanted a confrontation. She would give him one. Scanning the basement floor, Stacy's eyes landed on a heavy metal pipe. She grabbed it, feeling the cold weight of it in her hands. Positioned behind a stack of boxes, she could hear Jack's heavy footsteps drawing closer. Each step echoed in the damp, dark space. He moved closer, the distance between them shrinking with each step. Stacy remained frozen, knowing that any movement might give her away. But it didn't matter. Jack was already there, looming over her, his shadow swallowing her whole. "Stacy." Jack's voice cut through the silence, calm and taunting. "This is your last chance. Come out, and I might make it quick." She didn't respond. Holding her breath, she waited, her pulse racing. As Jack descended the stairs, his footsteps grew louder, closer. Her grip tightened around the pipe, her knuckles white with the effort. When Jack finally reached the bottom of the stairs, he paused, surveying the room. His back was turned to her. Stacy could see the tension in his posture, the arrogance in his stance. It was now or never. With a fierce resolve, Stacy swung the pipe with all her might. It connected with a sickening thud against Jack's head. He crumpled to the floor, a look of shock frozen on his face, blood quickly pooling around him. Panting, Stacy stood over him, her breath ragged. She had done it. She had stopped him. For a fleeting moment, relief washed over her. But it was quickly overshadowed by the harsh reality of her situation. As she turned to escape, she heard a groan. Jack was still alive, barely conscious, but alive. The sound of his labored breathing made her freeze. Should she finish him off, call for help, or run? Before she could decide, Jack's hand shot out, gripping her ankle. She screamed as she fell, the pipe slipping from her grasp. They tumbled across the cold concrete, a chaotic struggle of desperation and survival. Jack's grip was weak, but his fury made him relentless. Stacy's fear transformed into a primal drive to live. "You're not getting away with this," Jack spat, his voice a guttural rasp as he tightened his hold on her throat. Stacy's vision narrowed as her air supply dwindled. Her hands flailed around, searching for something, anything to fight back. Her fingers brushed the pipe, still cold from the impact. Summoning every ounce of strength, she grabbed it and swung upward. The metal connected with Jack's head with a brutal force. Jack emitted a guttural sound and slumped over, his grip loosening. Stacy pushed him off, scrambling to her feet, her blood roaring in her ears. Jack lay motionless, his face a grisly mask of blood and bruises. She stood over him, trembling, the pipe still in her hand. For a moment, the basement was silent except for Stacy's labored breathing. She watched Jack's still form, expecting him to move, to get up, but he didn't. His chest no longer rose and fell, and the chilling realization hit her. Jack was dead. The pipe slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. Stacy staggered back, her back hitting the wall. The enormity of what she had done crashed over her. The anger, the betrayal, the fear, it had all erupted into this raw, desperate violence. There was no time to process the horror of it. Stacy had to get out. She forced herself to move, her legs weak, her mind a whirl of panic. She climbed the stairs, each step heavy with the weight of what had just happened. Her escape route seemed like a distant dream, but she pushed on. When she reached the main floor, she made a beeline for the front door. But a thought halted her, a jarring reminder of another grim detail. Damien. His body was still outside, and the police would find him. They would find Jack too. What would they think of her story? Would they see her as a victim or a murderer? She couldn't afford to take that risk. Her mind raced with frantic calculations. She had to cover her tracks, eliminate the evidence. It was her only chance to save herself. Stacy turned back, resolute, her steps leading her towards the backyard where she would face the final, grim task of cleaning up her nightmare. Stacy's movements were mechanical, driven by a cold resolve that left no room for reflection. She hoisted Jack's lifeless body, her muscles protesting with the effort. Each step felt like an eternity as she dragged him from the basement up the stairs. Her heart raced with a relentless fear that he might revive, but he remained still, an ominous weight against her. She reached the backyard and quickly stripped him of his clothing, bundling him in the same dark plastic she had found Damien in. The smell of decay mixed with the fresh, earthy scent of soil, a macabre reminder of the task at hand. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the yard. Stacy glanced nervously at the fading light, knowing she had to work fast. She started digging beside Damien's body, her hands trembling as she worked the shovel into the hard ground. Each scoop of dirt was a battle, but she pressed on, fueled by fear and desperation. Her breaths came in sharp bursts, mingling with the rising sweat that dripped from her forehead. Just a little more, she muttered to herself, trying to ignore the sickening stench that clung to the air. Her movements became more frantic as the hole grew deeper, the darkness of the earth swallowing her attempts to erase the past. Finally, the grave was deep enough. Stacy heaved Jack's body into the hole, the plastic crumpling as it settled. She covered him with dirt, each shovelful a heavy reminder of the chaos that had consumed her life. The once pristine lawn was now marred by her frantic efforts, a graveyard concealing the secrets of the past day. When the hole was filled, she collapsed beside it, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The yard, now a patchwork of disturbed soil, seemed to mock her with its silent witness to her actions. But there was no time to rest. Stacy scrambled to gather the remaining evidence, the torn marriage certificate, the shattered wedding ring, and any other remnants of Jack's presence. She stuffed everything into a garbage bag, her movements hasty and disjointed. As she made her way to the Jack's car, she glanced over her shoulder, half expecting someone to appear to catch her in the act. She shoved the garbage bag into the trunk and slid into the driver's seat. Her hands shook as she gripped the steering wheel, her mind numb and disconnected. She drove for hours, the road stretching out like a never-ending ribbon of darkness. Her thoughts were a jumbled mess, her eyes fixed on the road ahead as she navigated through the night. The weight of what she had done hung heavily in her mind, but there was no room for reflection, only the need to dispose of the evidence. Finally, she found a secluded spot by a swamp, the area deserted and foreboding. She pulled over, her headlights casting eerie shadows on the surrounding trees. Stacy took the bag from the trunk, her hands trembling as she carried it to the edge of the swamp. With one final glance around, she tossed the bag into the murky depths, watching as it sank from view. As she drove back home, the night seemed to stretch endlessly. The emptiness of the road mirrored the hollow sensation in her chest. It was over, or at least she wanted to believe it was. But as the miles passed by, a gnawing sense of dread took root in her gut. The weight of what she had done, the lives she had ended, pressed down on her. The memories of the past 24 hours would not fade. Guilt, fear, and the haunting images of Jack and Damien's bodies would follow her, a constant reminder of the nightmare she had tried to bury. Days blurred together as Stacy attempted to regain a sense of normalcy, but the weight of her actions loomed over her. The house felt different, more like a cage than a sanctuary. The police had come by, and she had played her role as the grieving wife with practiced ease. Mrs. Wilson, Detective Harris began, flipping through his notebook. "We're trying to locate your husband. He left no sign of where he might have gone. Can you tell us anything more about his state of mind before he disappeared?" Stacy nodded, her eyes downcast. He was upset. "We've had a lot of problems lately. He left a note saying he needed time to clear his head. I thought he might have gone to stay with a friend, or maybe even just left town for a while. I don't know." Detective Harris scrutinized her. "Any idea where he could have gone?" "I wish I knew," Stacy said, her voice quivering slightly. "I'm so worried. He's never done anything like this before." The detective seemed to accept her story, though his gaze lingered a moment longer than she would have liked. "We'll keep in touch. If you think of anything, let us know." The door closed behind them, and Stacy sank into a chair, her hands trembling. The police were gone, but the sense of dread remained. Every doorbell chime, every siren in the distance made her heart race. Was this it? Was this the moment they would finally come for her? Her nights were no better. Dreams plagued her with horrifying images of Jack and Damien, their mutilated bodies accusing her with hollow eyes. She would wake up in a cold sweat, her chest tight, her mind reeling. The walls of the house, once comforting, now felt oppressive, as though they were closing in on her. Then, one morning, a letter arrived. The envelope bore Jack's handwriting, and her hands shook as she tore it open. Her heart pounded as she unfolded the single sheet of paper. The message was brief, but the words struck with chilling clarity. "You thought you could bury your sins, but they will never stay buried. I will haunt you until the end, Stacy. You will never be free." Stacy's breath caught in her throat. The letter slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Had Jack somehow orchestrated this from beyond the grave? The thought was both terrifying and maddening. She paced the room, trying to steady her breathing. "It's just a sick joke," she whispered to herself. "He's gone. He can't hurt me anymore." But deep down, she knew it wasn't true. The letter had set off a new wave of anxiety. Jack's words were a reminder that, even in death, he was still controlling her life, planting seeds of fear and paranoia. His presence was everywhere, in every creak of the house, every shadow that moved in the corner of her eye. She tried to act normal, to live her life as if nothing had happened, but it was impossible. The guilt gnawed at her, a constant companion. Her once beautiful home now felt like a prison, a place where she was trapped with her own dark thoughts. She considered leaving, starting over somewhere new, but the fear of being discovered and the dread of facing her past kept her rooted in place. The walls of the house, the echoes of her actions, were all she had now. The letter had made one thing clear. Stacy was not free. She was trapped in a never-ending cycle of fear and guilt, forever haunted by the ghosts of her past. The new beginning she had hoped for was nothing more than a mirage, and the nightmare of her actions would follow her always. Stacy packed up her life and moved to a new town, hoping that a change of scenery would erase her past. But no matter where she went, the shadows of her old life followed her. The letter from Jack was never far from her mind, a constant reminder that his revenge was far from over. She settled into a small, nondescript apartment in a quiet neighborhood. The fresh paint on the walls and the new furniture did little to erase the turmoil inside her. The freedom she sought seemed elusive, replaced by an ever-present sense of dread. Her days became a routine of uneventful tasks, but her nights were plagued with fear. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant siren, sent her heart racing. She would jump at the smallest sound, her mind conjuring images of Jack's face peering out from the shadows. The faces of strangers on the street sometimes seemed to morph into Jack's, his accusing eyes watching her from every corner. She avoided people as much as she could, afraid of letting anyone get too close. Social interactions became brief and uncomfortable as she struggled to mask her anxiety. Her once bright and vibrant demeanor had faded into a shell of her former self. One particularly cold night, the weight of her situation became unbearable. She walked to a small park near her apartment, hoping the fresh air would clear her mind. The park was deserted. The only sounds were the wind rustling through the trees and the distant crash of waves against rocks. Stacy found herself drawn to the edge of a cliff overlooking the ocean. The waves smashed violently against the rocks below, their rhythmic pounding a harsh reminder of her turmoil. The sky was dark, the wind fierce, but she felt nothing. She was numb, empty inside. As she stood at the cliff's edge, she thought she heard a familiar voice, low and menacing, whispering in her ear. "You'll never be free, Stacy. Not until you join me." Her breath caught in her throat. She looked around, but there was no one there. The words, though chilling, seemed to echo from within her own mind. The paranoia and guilt had twisted into a cruel internal torment. Stacy took a shuddering breath, her resolve hardening. She had tried to run from her past, to start anew, but the ghosts of her actions were relentless. The letter, the fear, the guilt, they had all led her to this moment. The past was not something she could outrun. It was something she could only escape by facing it directly. With a final, deep breath, she closed her eyes and took a step forward, her heart pounding as she fell into the void. The darkness enveloped her, the cold sea below waiting to claim her. As the ocean swallowed her, Stacy felt a sense of release, but it was tinged with the knowledge that Jack had succeeded in his revenge. His ghost had not only haunted her life, but had now claimed it completely. In death, she knew that Jack had won. His revenge was complete, and she would be haunted by him forever.